So, thank you. So, hello everyone. I'm the president of New York State Marine Education Association. We're here this evening for our first Thursday speaker series. And tonight we have a wonderful speaker. Her name is Patti Jordan. And before I get into reading about her background, I just wanted to say that I met Patti recently in October at the Fort Lee Historic Museum's art fair. And it was there that she had on display beautiful artwork um, of marine organisms. And so right away, and after hearing her talk right away, I knew she would be great for this evening's talk. Um, also, I also want to thank Russell. Russell Terrigan has been with us for 2 years now. He is director of the volunteer department at the American Museum of Natural Histories and the volunteer program, and he's been a wonderful facilitator for this program. So thank you, Russell. And also thanks goes out to Lou Siegel, who's with us as well, and he is responsible for all the promotional materials for this event. So it is February 6th, 2025, and I think we should get started. So I will give you some background about Patti Jordan. She is an interdisciplinary artist, writer, and arts educator. Her artistic practice conflates two and three-dimensional analog and digital processes, and she has exhibited her work throughout the United States, England, France, and Korea. Patti recently curated and exhibited her work in the national exhibition Inquistigation: Women at the Intersections of Art and Science, held at the Monmouth Museum in Lincroft, New Jersey. Her Benthic Elegies series combines diverse forms and materials, referencing hybrid waters such as estuaries, which intersect directly with ocean life, eliciting more intimate and expansive interpretations of our native environments. Patti is the recipient of a 2024 New Jersey Council on the Arts Fellowship, a solo exhibition award from the Center for Contemporary Art, Manifest Gallery Season 20 Grand Jury Award, and a Ford Foundation Award. She lectures on visual culture, and her writings have appeared in Tussle Magazine, Arte Fausse, Bomb Magazine, Intellect Books, and other publications. She holds a Bachelor of Fine Arts with honors from Pratt Institute, yay, and Master of Fine Arts, summa cum laude, from Montclair State University. She is an affiliate member of New York City's Pictor Gallery and a member at large for the Women's Caucus for Art. And so, without any further ado, let's welcome Patti Jordan. Welcome.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Russell, and thank you, Lou, for your support tonight. I want to welcome everyone and thank you for joining us. I want to share that I'm a fine artist and that I identified as an artist at a very young age. I grew up on the Palisades with a magnificent view of the Hudson River and Manhattan skyline. The Hudson is an estuary, a hybrid of Atlantic seawater and the river's brackish water. As a practicing artist for the past 20 years, I wanted to present Benthic Elegies, the lamentation of our human ecotone. Before I was involved in fine art, just principally as I am now, I had the opportunity to design for television stations, both broadcast in cable throughout the States and abroad. And the most recent one that I had a great experience with in terms of helping develop cable was CNBC TV, which coincidentally was also located on the Palisades. I want to start with a map of Long Beach Island's topography. I spent much of my childhood also at the Jersey Shore, such as Long Beach Island, known as LBI. People might know it's an 18-mile-long barrier island situated on the Atlantic coast in Ocean County, New Jersey. Coastal storms, hurricanes, and nor'easters regularly affect the area. It's a barrier marsh lagoon environment defined by its ocean shoreline, the seaward and landward lagoon marsh boundaries, and the inland marsh that it has. You can find more about this in the marine science section of frontiersin.org. In Barnegat Bay is located Manahawkin Bay, an estuary with a shallow microtidal bay system. You can find more about this on the USGS, the U.S. Geological Survey. This map is from there, and it's from the Federal Agency of Scientific Study of the Earth. So to the left is a map of LBI's beach erosion after Hurricane Sandy, and this study was done in 2013. If you look to the right, you can actually see, if you look to the top of the photo, that was all the beach erosion that happened in the southern tip of Long Beach Island. Now, in terms of influences, my mother was a very big influence on my creative activities. Why? We did so much amazing adventures together in local principalities or other places. So when we were down on Long Beach Island, we spent a lot of time in the water, talking about the water, investigating the water. And I actually got the chance to travel with my mother on a scuba diving trip. My mother's image to the right, she's Patricia Jordan. It's a picture of a manta birostris from the Maldives that she took. The picture to the left is one of my printmaking projects where I actually worked with printmaking tools and pouring ink to come up with an abstraction of those types of experiences with creatures. When we dived in the Cayman Islands, she brought me along and we did my first dive. I did a 100-foot dive and we went through caves in Cayman Island that were very narrow. And we also on one event, we did a night dive where we actually got to see octopus. And the octopus showed its emotions by changing color for us on that particular night dive. So these experiences I had with my mother at an early age and then later influenced my artistic processes and aesthetics. And I believe hers mine did the same for her. And so there are similarities, but of course contrasts with the two styles. Walk on a winter beach, the ebb and flow of the tide, the striations in the sand. My art practice is also subject to fluctuations like the ebb and flow of the tide. I cathartically pour and pull ink across my surfaces. The reticulation and the striations from this back and forth motion called drawing replicate these nascent experiences that I had on the beach and materialize as protean forms. My recent bodies of work aim to address broader environmental concerns now by intersecting the natural world with our human ecotone. This winter beach landscape is a place with a sense of timelessness induced by the procession of waves plunging upon the strand with elemental power. That's from Jenna Reynolds, president of Save Coastal Wildlife. So basically on my work, it's about what I make, how I make it, and why, and that's what I want to talk about tonight. But a lot of the textures in my work really look a lot like that beach scene there. A barrier island parallel to coast offers habitat shelter. So this is what a winter walk on Long Beach Island would look like. Very often you could do that as a solitary experience and just, being positioned parallel to the coast, you can take in so much just on a walk forward and backward, seeing some of the things on the beach at that day. So the island takes the impact from incoming storms, offering shelter to habitats on the mainland. And this, to me, this photo is such a vision. It's exactly how it feels and looks. Imagine the sound as the sand is whisked away by the strong winter winds. These were my best experiences too, because they just integrated and interacted the internal. So here, tar on the beach, natural pollution and man-made pollution. So the tone in this image is not only from oil pollution. There is tar from natural pollution, we know, and it's the presence of heavy materials like magnetite and pyrite in the sand. These dark solids, frequently found near the high tide line, tend to be truly heavy. And as a child, my grandmother would pick it up in her hand to show me just how dense it was and how dense it felt. These were lasting memories, and I started to do the same, picking up that sand and feeling its density. We know that the sand along the Jersey Shore comes from the weathering and erosion of shells over time as well. But there are also tar balls, magnetite, and oil spills. I can attest to the fact that from the 1960s to today, tar balls were often from oil spills, even back in the 60s to now. They've done a lot of work for improvement. However, this there was one in 2023 from a leaking refinery in Bayonne, New Jersey, owned by ExxonMobil. So that's what I refer to as the dichotomies of the beauty and affliction in the landscape. It carries both beauty and affliction. And I'm sure a lot of you guys can recognize these creatures. Walking on the winter beach as a solitary activity, you could ask what these sandpipers native to the region might be hunting for. And I'm sure you know the answer if you've been on the Jersey Shore or other regions nearby. Yes, an aesthetic influence embedded in memory, the East Coast mole crab or sand crab or sand flea, you can call them. And we know that the low tide is the best time to find them. They were such a wonderful experience growing up, even into adulthood. Mole crabs are filter feeders. They use their antennae to collect food. So claws are unnecessary. I thought they were claws, but they're not. They're the antenna that funnel waters to the gills. Their thoracic legs, digging and swimming. Their secondary antenna filter plankton, and they breathe the oxygen from the water, which goes into their gills. So there's this complex mechanism that is so small, but it's such a wonderful thing to see and feel when you're at the Jersey Shore. Tactile experience as well as the vision of it, because they're so fun to touch and grab in your hand and dig for them. So another thing that's a wonderful experience is detritus at our human Ecotone. We know too that shells and detritus on the shoreline are consistent and continuous visual influences. This was a nature-made juxtaposition. Post-storm, no footprints in the sand at all yet. I got up to the beach right after the storm. So the only footprints you can see are really mine, circling this beautiful form. So left high in the shoreline from high tide, these are fragments of a horseshoe crab intertwined with a piece of driftwood, and nature made its own artwork, so I had to circle it and get different views. Looks a lot like my artwork. So my artwork is on the left, and this quote is from Ink and Clay 46, which is a wonderful national exhibition we had this past year on art and science. Quote, "Art carries the transformative power to render scientific concepts into a multitude of visual expressions. The synthesizing of art and science enabled me to investigate knowledge systems through tactile intuitive processes in order to extract meaning. My artistic process is experimental. I rely on chance and unpredictability. I pour and pull ink across surfaces with squeegees, brushes, and unique tools. Similar to Asian traditions and spontaneous processes, ink is the prime ingredient. This is an ink pour on paper from 2015 titled, quote, Reap, Viscera 048. So a lot of my work may not be about, well, what is it? We know what it is. No, it's a mystery because it's an amalgamation. Things are conjured and suggested, but they do look like primordial forms. And the ink that I work with reminds me a lot of the tar on the beach. Hornmad by Conical 001, 2010. My work also connotes science through recurrent imagery resembling hybrid specimens of marine life, insects or bodily viscera. I denote classifications after the phrase to underscore the scientific references and to subvert any laden emotions in the initial catchword. Unlike pure science, however, the amalgamation of art and science investigates knowledge systems, as I mentioned before, through intuitive processes. Not unlike scientists, however, artists are innate thinkers, researchers, creators, and observers who apply open or finite systems of exploration to research. They test and document and present their artistic findings. Here, I'm working with asymmetry. It's a little wabi-sabi, as the Japanese might say. It implies the imperfect. I often look for the perfect pour, but not the perfect form. So I kind of enjoy the way it looks like two distinct species have been kind of hybrided together in this. So speaking about different visual expressions that art and science take, music is a genre that can actualize new visual expressions. They create different contexts for themes of art and science. Recently, my works have often been paired in concert with live music, such as here with the dynamic duo The Evergreens. This photo was taken at the nonprofit Art House 6 Gallery in Johnston, Pennsylvania. All over the country, interesting artwork is being made as well as music. So I like the juxtaposition of color here with the black and white works. Again, exhibition spaces are integrating art and music more to create emotive and immersive experience, another form of visual expression. These soundscapes reach new audiences and expand interpretations of the work. To quote Alpha Art Gallery, textures of the tides refers to the varied and changing surface appearances of the ocean as influenced by the tides, including the visual textures created by the movement of water over sand, rocks, and other underwater features, and shifting depending on the tide, level, and conditions. Essentially, the visual, quote, texture of the shoreline as the tide rises and falls. I find it relates to interpretations of the potential shape-shifting of pelagic and benthic forms and geological landscapes. It relates also to the idea of identity as shape-shifting, which I value. I had the privilege of collaborating over the past several years with the Midwestern recording studio and record label, UTech Records. These albums and fold-outs coordinate with a lot of my work, which is often framed with basic geometric shapes, such as the circle. The musical genre tends to harmonize with the selected artwork that the musicians curated. So to the left is by a saxophonist. He wanted something a little bit more loud and vibrant in terms of graphics, so he chose this design. And to the right, Stargazer's Assistant is an album in which the genre is about drone and ambient, a little softer. So both like different types of movements and textures. Another form of visual expression we're all familiar with, publications of art serve as another medium for which to experience art. It becomes its own art form and visual expression. And it also serves as an archival system for one's own legacy. Curious Matter is a gallery in Jersey City, New Jersey, and they publicate the works of the exhibitions they put together. So does Manifest Gallery in Cincinnati, Ohio, on the bottom. And these forms, to me, they look like hybrids, again, of pelagic and benthic creatures. They have a sci-fi feel to the drawings, and I think that's something that I find attractive, that amalgamation. Growing up with sci-fi movies as a kid too. So this is almost like, if you will, morbid anatomy. Something went terribly wrong in the lab. Quote unquote, art and science can't rely on intuition, but art and science can rely on understanding. This is also a quote from the other ink and clay exhibit. And I don't necessarily agree with it full tilt, but let's talk about it. Shells and detritus on the shoreline are influences. For the past 10 years or so, I'm bringing them into the studio. Things I find in the beach, I take home and collect now. Contemplating them and looking out the window one day, I wrote, crustacean and mollusk fragments at dusk on my studio sill were today's panacea. So it's a lot better than taking a pill. Science may not rely on intuition as evidence, which it can't, but it can be in addition to the mix in finding innovative solutions to artistic problems. This statement can be debated, but we know that the topic of science and intuition are in the news a lot lately, no? So, okay, play with intuition a little bit with art, but science has to be fact. So the life of an artistic practice is often a solitary activity. That's me to the left. I look a bit serious here, pouring my ink. I often look for collaborative experiences like those to the right in art making to broaden my vision and skill sets. It's wonderful to work with other people in a group. Here I am, a guest at the wet lab of Minot State University's printmaking department, a very, very vibrant department with a lot of creative students and faculty. Here I'm pouring fluid materials. As minimal as the object is, the results were very dramatic when completed in person. Simplicity is complexity resolved, is what Brancusi once said. I attest to that. Look at those smiles on those Midwesterners too, right? Don't you love it? I call my studio my wet lab. I play with the idea of science-based art-making techniques, materials, and concepts to form linkages. My art practice relates to various art forms. I'm sorry? And try to make sure I don't go over my time limit. So my art practice relates to various art genres, yet assimilates systems of isolating, classifying, categorizing form, linking it steadfastly to the study of science. By mimicking the lab environment through formal and symbolic means, including pouring ink, my work creates portals to known and unknown universes. Described as fluid media, this image I created is an 8-foot horizontal scroll displayed during my workshop residency. It was part of my solo show titled Subfusk at Flattail Press Gallery. You can recognize fins on these bodies, and they resemble some type of pelagic creatures connecting to each other in the tidal currents. The flux and flow of process described in the final drawing. Here I was working big. I truly was pouring and pulling my ink back and forth across the surface in a cathartic motion, imitating the surf on the shoreline. The experience was cathartic, hypnotic, and of course, relaxing. It's nice, too, to challenge yourself by working big, too. So, biological taxonomy, the science of naming, classifying, describing living organisms, is based on shared characteristics. Biological taxonomy was a development of the 18th century laboratory, which took place in Western Europe in the Romantic period. Romanticism, a literary, artistic, and philosophical movement, emphasizing imagination, emotions, and autobiographical material. It could even be said that the naming, classifying, and categorizing in itself is a romantic activity. I like to apply the framework of biological taxonomy to create systems of order for my images. And you can see me here to the left, organizing a visual grid, systems of order to classify, not only classify, but to also display the work. It helps you to see, quote unquote, the big picture, and then that whole grouping gets displayed on a wall. Scanning, photography, and digital manipulation. The digital dupes, as they're called, are iterations of original drawings, composite photographs resembling emulsive prints, and other 19th century photographic processes. Deviations from the original image, they challenge the primacy of the initial mark. Blurring divisions between the copy and the original, they diverge from their original prototype through digital manipulation and processing. I scan these on the scanner. I digitally manipulate the images in Photoshop and add my original ink drawings shown in the outer details there. So the things that look kind of pointy in there and very delicate is an ink drawing that's been wrapped around in Photoshop around photographs of skulls and other types of organisms and their skeletons. Really a fun process. Here again, this grouping titled Intercrosser, I scanned a blue crab shell from the Jersey Shore, more prevalent in the last decade in the Barnegat Bay and ocean since there's been some ecological cleanup done. That information is also in the Barnegat Bay Partnership. Intercrossers are from the hybrid series. I'm mirroring the form in Photoshop and hybridizing ink on paper with scan imagery of crustaceans this time, but with those shells. Simple one-to-two-word naming systems correlate to these primordial forms and the act of duplication. The other thing that Barnegat Bay Partnership has been involved in is protecting and improving water quality by reducing causes of water quality degradation. And that's another reason why we've seen the blue crab return in abundance on the Jersey Shore. It makes us very happy. Mirroring the form in Photoshop again, with scanned marine life references, pelagic form instead, this time with shark teeth that I have in my studio. I believe I picked this shark tooth skeleton up in Manhattan on the Upper West Side, but I loved it in my studio. Again, simple 1 to 2 word naming systems correlate to these forms and the act of duplication. As I was working on some of these images, I happened to bring the skeleton down to my dining room and just caught this beautiful light hitting at the teeth in the afternoon and had a photo capture it. Symbiosis, Reciprocal Origins, Dyad 023AB, 2023. Inspired by my workshop at Flattail Press Gallery, I started working with things more that look like they're under the microscope, like they're slowly moving like snail slugs, crustaceans, or plasma across the surface. Now I'm starting, even though my images are minimal and reductive for the most part, I'm trying to layer for more depth and complexity in the work. Numbers and text beneath imply logic but are illogical. I'm exploring cellular systems as a stand-in for the self and relational identity formations through both singular to plural models. After all, we're all different. And I'm enumerating, I'm adding these up and creating more, making copies, but also making them a little bit different. Again, not what it's in your mind, but what it conjures. Here is a picture of the exhibition I was so happy to curate in 2023 at Monmouth Museum. It was a huge space. I loved curating a national group show on women in art and science. All the women artists I chose for the exhibition have art practices engaging science in some way or in some spirit of experimentation. These 12 artists were also a member of the WCA, the Women's Caucus for Art, a women's art and activism organization. And there was ample space to curate and install the work, as you can see. There was a lot of gridding here too. You can see that a lot of artists who work in this way, even if they're working a little bit more loosely and organically, they tend to work with grids. It's just their natural tendency being interested in art and science. And this is the work to the right that I love so much in this show, Chris Ann Baker's glass sculptures. They reference, all right, I'm going to try this, cephalopods, the molluscan class Cephalopoda. Squid, octopus, cuttlefish, and nautilus are her references with modifications of a head and set of tentacles. Here's another artist to the right from the show. She had beautiful work and sent it all in boxes and crates from the Midwest, Stefka Truz. She captures images by using a small scanner from Office Depot, no less. Large prints are produced by placing detritus on a scanner bed. In effect, she produces a camera-less image. Note the pseudo-octopus tentacle beneath some seaweed and a mushroom top. So she's also working with sea forms, even if they are a little bit abstracted or artificial. It's how she combines elements that speak to the illogical and a sense of whimsy. Big, beautiful pieces in the show. This is my Selves series, where I'm working with the idea of identity as shifting, microbiology, and pseudoscience at the same time. And this gridded presentation repeatedly incorporates centralized hybrid forms. I work with the iconic often, and that was my tendency in television, to work with something simple in graphics that people could see and understand right away. So these signified embodied presence. I am the image. Contrasted are the circles, clearly defined edges about the encapsulated organisms. Frequently obscured or darkened in areas, the inky ensuing forms connote personal identity shifting through transitory states, a seemingly quote-unquote microbial dark matter. Again, playing with the idea that, oh, things that are different are monstrous. In microbiology, the term culture refers to the growth of organisms. Similarly, my pouring methods and isolationic frameworks correlate to the pseudo-study of human cultures. In this way, these formations of self can convey a coexistent relationship to more vital concerns, such as the vastness of our social organisms. So I was happy recently to have been able to get this large piece, you can see me there to the right, in a show up at the Arts Council of Princeton. And they're really good about enabling large work as well as small work to be displayed at the same time. I really appreciated that. And they installed it themselves. So Ink and Clay 46 was really exciting. It was a Getty Museum 2024 PST Art Initiative, PRST for Pacific Standard Time. More than 50 organizations explored the intersection of art with cosmology, biotechnology, sustainable agriculture, the climate crisis, and environmental justice. I was so happy to be selected. I started to apply science-based art-making practices recently to explore and gain greater understanding about our human ecotone and our relationship to shorelines and bodies of water where we intersect with marine life, more specifically with benthic organisms. So I was working with both ink and clay, which was interesting to me, and the show was about ink and clay. There must be some connection that a lot of artists working with art and science like to also work with ink and clay. So these were my first conceptions of mixing media with drawing and ceramics. There was mistakes I made along the way, but it was an awful lot of fun because my friend who's a ceramic artist, she was very helpful. These experiments led to my Benthic Elegies series, a shift into expressions of hybrid waters, specifically estuaries, such as ocean life intermixing with brackish water, oceans into bays, rivers, or other freshwater zones. And you had to work really delicately. These are also porcelain, so it was really a lovely experience. It almost felt like working with sand on the beach, this porcelain clay, and then glazing them. It had that kind of consistency. And it was wonderful also to start working with things that were now placed tabletop instead of necessarily on the wall. It's opened up a whole new area for me. Crab claws spinning out of the infinity of the parallax here to the right. This piece created multiple planes of space and time in one image. The inky drawing was produced by pulling ink across printmaking paper with a cardboard squeegee. And then the lights and darks created a sense of illusionism. So then I created this area, if you can see, where the claws seem to be coming out of the page, out of the infinite. And then I said, like, why don't I just now paste on some of these claws on top, playing with the picture plane, the flat surface, as well as the perspectival there, the dimensional. And that was kind of fun. I'm going to try to introduce some more different pieces now as we move on. Hold your attention. Some of the ceramics I purposefully shatter into fragments to imitate some of the detritus found at the water's edge. Sometimes a living creature will be a surprise inside a shell, which happens so often. In fact, very often it will be under the shell and you'll turn it over and there it will go. I was happy with the outcome of this piece, and the detail shows the surprise inside the ceramic shell. The light and delicate nature of these paired forms on paper, the color and the softness of sand found at the reminded me of the Jersey Shore. This is a lithograph printed at Flattail Press Gallery, and the blow-up detail is on the right. But there was something about it feeling like it almost was on sand in terms of color and texture. Felt soft. We're seeing huge increases still in jellyfish, quote unquote, bloom activity, a result possibly of overfishing and changing water temperatures, and that their temperatures are getting warmer. I'm definitely taking some creative license here with the monster bloom. It's a jellyfish, a harbinger of treasures, but there is some transfiguration going on. I find that there's a change in form or appearance into what might be considered for these creatures a more beautiful or spiritual state. They do omit a spiritual state when you look at them, especially when you're swimming with them underwater. So the close-up of the monster bloom to the right is a little bit of a stretch. It resembles more the shagreen, quote unquote, the skin on skates and stingrays that you would sometimes see on the beach, which have a similar skin texture to the clay and the wrinkles in the clay, which I was trying to go for. Those skins often wash up ashore and are left behind sometimes by fishermen, but they're so interesting and curious. They make me, just like jellyfish taking over the bay. So we have to think that there could be many reasons, but it seems that overfishing and water temperatures are the cause for these monster blooms happening, including in the Barnegat Bay. I decided to include a close-up of a work I'm working on right now because it was too hard to see the details in the overall picture. But for me, this is bottom feeder bliss. Mussels, oyster, clam, snail, and scallop shells are included in this piece. Here in the center in the top, what I know that I'm mining from in my mind are the mole crab's antennae and thoracic legs, the blue crab shells and claws, and romantic reflections and refractions of the moon at night when you're seeing these. So this is a hodgepodge. It's a cornucopia, but it's also like letting the mind wander and drift on these ideas and then subconsciously creating them in your artwork. I just like also the transparency and the feeling that the image looks really crowded the way the cackling goes on the beach when these creatures wash up ashore, especially at low tide. They're still alive, many of them. And when you hear that cackling, there's also something that sounds like breathing. And they are. We know these organisms are breathing, these benthic organisms. This is also the Benthic Elegies. These ceramic shards allude to intertidal zones now. They evoke the combined genres of ancient printmaking for me and photography. The forms are ambiguous in the center, particularly, and for many people, they read as either relics, spiritual or symbolic appendages, runes, and rows. They're in rows the way we read left to right, which runes are. They're alphabetical. So these runes reading left to right juxtapose with these vertical sections. There are 3 sections to this print, and I basically cut them up to make a mysterious language. They imply bones, possible burial too, in that the vertical forms are seeming to almost dig into another stratosphere there. For me, I've moved into another zone in the work. It's progressed, it's grown. I'm taking on a little bit the feeling of ethnography, and original land ownership is coming to mind. Diversity of cultures, descendants of the original inhabitants of Manahawkin and maybe Long Beach Island, since they didn't live on the island. They knew to keep the relationship off on the land and leave the island as a separate zone for them to go to and fish occasionally. So it's a little bit about relationship with the land, revisiting history, and again, the Lenape Indians didn't habit the island, but they came and visited, and they went, I believe, back to Manahawkin, which is on the mainland. But there's lots to fish for in this work. Another area I've pursued is barnacles, another benthic creature. So this monotype is a tempest. Swirling waves stir up barnacles, transitioning from pelagic to the benthic, which they do. In hybrid waters, estuaries are liminal spaces where brackish and seawater intermix, as I mentioned. But here, I've made up my own genu of barnacles, and barnacles dynamically transition some of them, literally from pelagic to benthic habitats by swimming on a strip of algae in motion. They then latch on to something sturdy and become benthic. These glazed ceramic pieces look a bit like the barnacle that have made it to the shore and have dried in the sun down on Long Beach Island. Barnacles, as we know, are also crustaceans. And to the right, I show a detail of my benthic, my barnacle. There are other interpretations of barnacles, which I'll show in just a second. I also loved these photographs taken by photographer to the left. Mo Riza is her name, and these are Jersey Shore barnacles. I had never seen that kind of diamond configuration, geometric designs combined with the organic. And to the right, this acorn barnacle is a photo from the Florida Museum by photographer Amanda Remus. I feel these are wonderful inspirations. The formal qualities of each of these barnacles is striking. So when I work in clay also, sometimes I'll have up a photograph or I will work from memory. So this here is my last slide, and I wanted to end on this because in this photo, I'm pairing an original object with the man-made next to it. And it feels a little bit like analyzing processes for me. I'm pairing the original with the man-made. So the left is a snail shell that I found on the beach. I love the fact that it's a fragment and forms its own composition. And the ceramic version to the right is a porcelain piece that I did. And I decided to just juxtapose these together. Um, on the right, taking one step further, I'm then digitally manipulating the object. I've taken forms that I photographed, merged them, and then added even more to them. So it's really to kind of express questions that arise on how our human development affects natural habitats and their ecological processes. The human is in there somewhere influencing. I don't have an answer, but in art making, I can continue to question how our human development affects habitats. I have found, however, that art and activism in tandem do contribute to creating positive change. At the very least, art and science can help us to think more responsibly on how we interact with the greater environment and our natural world. Why not ask our community of artists, scientists, and researchers to come together and share skills and best practices for a better world by integrating their respective research and skill building? I wanted to say that maybe even since my slide presentation has been New Jersey oriented, maybe even New Jersey artists and artists from New York or those working in ecological activism can come together and form a bigger community. Thank you for joining me today, and I hope you enjoyed wading in the water together. And that's it for my presentation. And let me just put also up my references if you have any interest in further investigating any of the things that I've talked about here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Patty. Very, very much appreciated. Very interesting talk. And so if any, we can open it up to now any questions from our audience. If someone wants to ask a question, you could just go right on and ask, or if you want, if you're used to raising your hand, you can do that as well. And well, oh, yep, Sarah Richards, go ahead. You have to unmute.
I just clapped my hands.
Oh,
Fantastic. They were beautiful. Thank you so much, Patty. Well, all right. Since I have here, I'll video myself also.
volume is off.
Okay, hi.
Hi, Sarah.
Um, I am a science teacher at a school in Brooklyn called St. Anne's School, and the school is over 50 years old, and we've had a very strong base in the arts all along. So we have interdisciplinary classes, and there's a very popular class that's happening this year, but it's happened in the past as well, called like art and science. And it's co-taught by an art teacher and a science teacher. And the science teacher sort of going through different phyla, and then the art teacher helps guide the students in drawing the things that they're seeing. So for like the science teacher will give scientific information about horseshoe crabs, and then they draw the horseshoe crabs, which I collected at Plum Beach last fall, by the way, and gave to them. But I think what they're doing is fantastic, and the drawings they produce are beautiful, but they are very realistic. And what I got out of your presentation was the abstract beauty of just like starting with the realistic thing and then sort of taking it one step further. So I'm going to share some of your pictures with them, and just to give them a different perspective and help them think about like how you can take this a little bit further. So thank you very much.
That sounds wonderful, Sarah. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also being in Brooklyn, you're close to, I'm sure, plenty of estuaries, no?
Yes, and I grew up on the Jersey Shore, but on in Seaside Park, so the Barry Island north of LBI. Yeah, so I totally identified with everything you were showing.
That's
The
so
mole
wonderful what
crabs.
you're doing. Yeah, with the children. Oh, right. And even as
Yeah.
adults, don't we still feel like children when we feel
Yes,
those crabs in our hands?
absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm so happy that that uh, this talk was able to touch one of our viewers from New Jersey, and because I've been in New Jersey a very long time, since 1971, and so just kind of visiting the beaches and trying to envision what you were talking about on the beaches. I know I take in a lot of the atmosphere when I'm at the beach, not really, I'm not really there to go swimming, although I could, but I am looking for the atmospheric experience and also for the tactile experience. So I really do appreciate how you connected the um, the realistic to the abstract. Anybody else want to chime in? Lou?
Yeah. Hi. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was really nice. The first ones that you were showing about which were just ink on paper. Do you treat the paper at all to react with the ink, or is that just the ink on the paper?
That's a really good question, Lou. Thank you for asking that. I'm a chemist. That's the science part. And artists love to work with chemicals and materials. So what I do is I work with solvents on the paper.
Okay,
And
right.
sometimes when I was at the Flatel Press Gallery, I meant to mention that they hooked me up with such great stuff to work with in order to get interesting designs and configurations when I was there. So I was working with recycled Xerox toner on the paper, which was wonderful because that's kind of sustainable. You're using something that's already been used instead
Right.
of using something new. But then they gave me a recipe of that with Kodak photo flow. So I was actually quote unquote floating these forms on the recycled paper as well. And some really interesting things developed. So things that we can do now with sustainability are really amazing. Necessity is the mother of invention, so to speak. But it was a really good question because some people will float the ink in water with other things, like such as alcohol or even a little bit of raw egg in there, to get up.
Right. No, I could see there was some sort of a reaction going on, so I was working on it. But I like the three-dimensional works also. You started with the porcelain, so that you have a three-dimensional nature to it. It's really very interesting stuff. Thank you.
Thanks, Lou. And the studio where I do a lot of the three-dimensional, the clay, are with us tonight, Andrew and Karen Borg. Karen Borg is a ceramicist, and she's been a wonderful influence in terms of being able to work with these 3D elements. It's been a challenge for me too, I must say.
Right. Right. Very nice.
Emma, go ahead. Emma? Oh, sorry. Karen, I think you wanted to say something. No? Okay. All right. Sorry. Um, yeah, the one thing that I thought was very interesting, you showed it at the almost at the very end was a beautiful picture of benthic organisms that bordered on the abstract. Like I could make out the images of different organisms, and in some cases I felt I knew what I was looking at, and in other cases it kind of moved off into the abstract a little bit, and everything was sort of attached to everything else. So it made for prolonged looking, which I really enjoyed. And so I appreciate your showing that. It was one of the more realistic ones that you showed.
At one point, you talked about a group that were monoprints. So was that something that was put down on the surface and then paper put on top of it to make an impression?
Actually, I am also a printmaker, and the monoprints are the conventional uses of printmaking, where I actually take a giant roller and I roll
Right.
the ink over my print, and then I subtract with various tools, squeegees and um, towels to remove the ink to make the white area. But it gives such like lovely in-between grays in that process too.
Right.
And I'm trying now to expand the work with multiples, so there are 3 prints in that piece. So I like the fact that the vertical forms are going horizontal and the prints are going vertical. So bringing in trying to add a little bit more variation and complexity to the work has been a real eye opener for me these past few years.
A lot of experimentation.
And some failure too.
Right, right.
A lot of failure, but that's part of the learning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to invite you to our conference on May 3rd at SUNY Maritime College. And for our viewers too, that's where our next conference will be. And certainly if you wanted to attend, we have a link and flyer out there. I think if you were interested in setting up a table, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you wanted to do an exhibit table or talk about your artwork, that would certainly be welcome. So May 3rd, Saturday, upcoming conference. And that's for everybody as well. Are there any more questions that people might like to ask or make observations? All right, then. I want to thank everybody for coming. Every Thursday, at the first Thursday, we have these talks, so I hope everyone could make future talks. And the conference is coming up, and also a midwinter sustainable seafood workshop is also coming up. So look for all that stuff in our newsletter.
And this, just to remind you, this was recorded and will be available on our website, along with about 25 others that we've done the last 2 years. So
thank you, Lou. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody, for joining us this evening. It was great seeing everyone. Thank you, Patti, for a wonderful talk. And we look forward to talking with you again sometime soon.
Thank you so
Take
much
care.
for this invitation.
Thank you so much.